Okay, so for the past few weeks, we've been focusing on Adventure Synchron. There are two iterations of Synchron. There's a pure version where you utilize Junk Converter and Doppel Warrior, and then there's Adventure Synchron, the one that utilizes the Adventure engine. Of course, the Adventure engine alone stands a bit higher than the pure version because that's a singular card that applies pressure, whereas Synchron doesn't really have access to that. It's mainly focused on 2 to 3 card combos that can be a bit fragile. Needless to say, that doesn't mean that it can't function properly at the moment, because it requires testing, it requires effort, and we need a definitive meta to be able to implement non-engine relevant to the best decks. So I'll be showing you guys something that's a bit close to what it might look like in the future, and there's some minor changes that you can do depending on what your preferences are, like utilizing Yugioh or not using Synchron World, that type of thing. But let's just get straight into it. 3 start a Synchron, and this was anticipated because we were discussing on the ratio of Junk Synchron, because you only really played 3 because you wanted to be able to summon the level 3 off of Junk Speeder, because there's times where you want to sequence in a way where you want to preserve your level 1 and your level 2. Otherwise you would have to go Speeder and Jet into a 6, draw a card, and then 6 and 2 into an 8, whereas having the level 3 allowed you to preserve those two tuners because you can do something with them later on. That's why we played it at 3. But now that we have another level 3 within Revolution Synchron, we can cut back on this because we could just summon Revolution. It's an extender as well. But the thing is, you can't play 1, because if you do play 1 and you open this with Junk Converter, you can't pitch this in Junk Converter and then search another Junk Synchron because you only play 1. So you don't want to be in that situation, so at the very least you have to play 2. And then of course you have your other Synchrons. This one's a bit of a preference, but I feel like once you resolve Speeder, there's going to be a situation where you have only one non-tuner and a bunch of tuners, right? Excluding him, assuming you don't play him. But since you have him and Speeder as an option, how will they interact with your non-tuners? Because that's one of the best situations you can be in, having 2 non-tuners and 2 tuners, because it'll vary in how they interact with you. Because that means they would have to anticipate correctly to stop what you're intending to do. So I know it's not ideal, you don't want to draw this, so that's why you just play 1 of it. And then of course you have your Revolution Synchron. It's just an extender, it's a new level 3, it's amazing of what it can do. If you draw him, it's not the worst, because if you resolve Speeder, or at the very least, if you go Speeder and then negate your Speeder, you can go into Crystal Wing, right? And then use the effect, mill, and then trigger your Doppel and climb with Marcher. Because otherwise, how else will you Synchro summon? Unless you have Overtake, or unless you have access to a Foolish, you know, it's another extender that isn't a Synchron. And then of course you have Assault Synchron and Jet Synchron. You only play 1 of these because the issue with Pure is opening up with multiple Synchrons, multiple tuners. That was the way the deck bricked. If this is the only Synchron that allows you to do a level 8 Synchro play that you might benefit from. But like, for example, if you open up multiple Junks, that does nothing for you. Same thing for this, same thing for this, same thing for this, especially him. He doesn't do anything. There's a few things that you can do if you open up a variation of these, right? For example, if you open up this, you can special distribute it for this, and then Synchro into SD, right? SD then revives this, and it allows you to trigger your Doppel, which is essentially what you want to keep doing and have access to as consistent as possible. But for the most part, you don't really want to open these in pairs. And then we have our non-tuners. You have your Junk Converter. This is like one of your best non-tuners the deck has, because it allows you to unbrick with all of your tuners, especially hand traps, because most of the hand traps are tuners. So you can either use the hand trap or have it serve a different purpose, which is boost your consistency to getting you to Speeder. And then of course you have your Doppel Warrior. This is an amazing extender. It's been here since it's been there since the very beginning. These two have been one of the best dynamic duos ever. It just, what it produces is insane, especially with Junk Speeder resolving. But it's in a weird spot, these two now, because you don't really have any room once you resolve Junk Speeder. Like, this can revive the last one, but then you would go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So there's no room for these guys, especially him. But you still want to have them as an option because it helps you chain blocks the Ash. So you have to decide which order you do it in, right? Because obviously there's going to be times where you can benefit from the Doppel tokens and benefit from the junk converter reviving a tuner. But that'll be subjective to your situation. And for the most part, you're always going to be going chain blocking, chain one speeder, chain two this to get 2 tokens. And then at that point, you're going to decide which Synchrons you're going to summon, whether it be this and this, because you can only summon 3, right? So you can't summon all of them. But you have quite the variety of options, so every situation will be different. And then of course you have your Stardust Trail, you have your Synchron Carrier for on your market to duel, and then of course you have the new Stardust monster that we play now, Stardust Worm. So the reason we play this is because we play Illumination, and Illumination can send us to the graveyard, and this and junk is combo now, whereas before it wasn't, which is a subtle consistency boost, but it's significant enough to consider it. Because there's times where you open up a 3-tuner hand that would not do anything unless you have this. So for example, if you open up this, and this, if this was not in the deck, this would not be speeder. It's the best of a worst case situation, but nonetheless, it's still something you can fulfill. And this allows for that to happen, which is pretty cool. The way it would go is, you special this, tribute this for Stardust, activate Stardust effect, add Illumination, activate Illumination, send this to graveyard, and then summon Junk Synchron, activate effect, reborn your Stardust Worm, and at this point, you have a few options, right? You can either increase this one by 1, and it becomes a 2, and you can go speeder here, or you can go speeder here, and if speeder gets negated, then you have an 8 climb, which would then mean you can go into XL Sneaker First Dragon, and then you have a level 2 tuner in your graveyard that you can use to revive, and you revive him. And then we get to our non-engine. This is all preference. This is just, I felt like it was relevant to the format. The only matchup these wouldn't be good in would be Lab, minus this one, because you can hit their welcome. But these do absolutely nothing, which then would require you to side them out post game 1. But you do not want to be losing to Vanadium or even the mirror matches, because like, you just lose. They just hand loop you and you just lose. So at least this gives you a fighting chance. And then of course you have your consistency card. You have triple tuning, you have triple on your mark, you have your triple overtake. So like, this ties these together because this gives you access to Carrier, the non-tuner Synchron, which was what the deck lacked. You lacked access to a non-tuner, but this helped with that. Tuning just gives the option to just search any Synchron you want, get the potential 1-card speeder, which is activate this, search junk, mill Doppel, mill converter, and there's your 1-card speeder, which is pretty cool. Same thing with this. This helps you chain block the Ash, which is pretty huge. It allows you to go into XL lines when you hard open the Doppel Warrior or the Junk Converter. Activate this, special the Junk Synchron, normal summon any of your level 2s, whether it be Junk Converter or Doppel Warrior. You go XL, and it's pretty insane. And then finally you have your you have Rhoda, Foolish, Illumination, Reborn. And then of course you have Call by the Grave, because you lose to draw. Because you have to go Converter, you have to go Tuning, you have to go on your mark, you have to go Overtake sometimes. You know, so you just hard lose to draw. So you need this. You just absolutely need this. But yeah, that's a flat 40. I know a lot of you really like the 40 threshold, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. You want efficiency, nothing too crazy, nothing too ambitious. It's just very cookie cutter. Some of the cards I was considering were contemplating the Walker package, because there's some pretty cool things you can do with this. Let's say you open up like a variation of this, right? Because like you have so many Synchron searchers, right? So you can come up with this variation quite easily. So for example, let's say you do this, right? Let's say you go discard for Walker, right? Special this, okay? And then now this is on the field, right? So how did it interact with you here? It'll be subjective. Some people anticipate differently. But then what you can do here is you can go into ASD, right? ASD. And then you can go activate effect, whether they interact there or not. It's completely up to them. It'll vary, right? But if they do, you can go effect, and they chain something, you chain, right? You chain this guy, summon your Stardust, and then you synchro these two into Punisher, right? Punisher, and then you resolve your XL, right? So you would revive that. You would then revive this, and then you would have this setup, which is pretty cool. This is still live. You can summon this, And that's without having to normal summon. So like that was a cool little thing that I wanted to implement. And then of course, the souls package, because you play so many spells in search and some of them become redundant, right? So you would still play this as well. So you can like discard redundant overtakes on your marks, tunings, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. And it pairs well with Stardust. And then of course, this is like originally in the previous builds I've been playing Book of Moon, play this as well. Talents, these as well, main deck this. Because like pure Synchron kind of needs these blowout non-engine cards to be able to function, because the deck itself is efficient, it's consistent, but it requires that extra help from the non-engine aspect, which would then require an established meta to be able to what you can main deck and what you can't. And then you have your extra deck. Okay, so you have your Dispatter, you have your Baron, you have your Starlight Warrior. I was playing Crimson, but I just didn't find the room, and I didn't feel like I wanted to cut any of these. Then you have your Crystal Wing, you have Omega, Charge, TG. You still play this for Overtake, Junk Speeder, XL Sneaker Shark Dragon, Herald, Marcher, Widow Marcher, this guy, and of course these two. These cards are amazing. These cards are so good. But that's basically the deck. Go ahead and try it out. Like I mentioned before, there's some minor changes you can do, but I feel like some of the things that I mentioned were quite justified, and it makes sense. Like, because there's gonna be times where you can't really focus and be too peculiar with theory, because I understand, like, okay, well, yeah, if you don't want to draw these, like, of course you don't want to draw them, but you have to kind of analyze what they provide and if it's impactful enough to be kept in the main deck. This kept coming up. Same thing with the wheel. Like I would resolve Speeder, and I would have just no non-tutor. I was like, oh, it's kind of whack. So this puts them in a very awkward scenario, because they have access to 2 non-tuners and more than 2 tutors. So, but yeah, go ahead and try it out. Let me know what you think, and that's gonna be it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe if you haven't, and thanks for watching.